Right now at 5, we begin with good news for a little girl grazed by a bullet during a murder-suicide. She is doing well tonight. Houston police say her mother and stepfather died in a case of domestic violence.
This makes the second deadly incident in a week, and Houston police say domestic violence has become an epidemic in the city of Houston.
Melissa Correa joins us now live to talk about what HPD is doing to keep families safe. Melissa.
Hey there, Mia. Listen, from mapping out domestic violence hotspots to asking officers to predict the future behavior of an offender, this new initiative rolls out tomorrow.
Domestic violence in our city, it's an epidemic proportion.
At a crime scene in southwest Houston, where police believe a man shot and killed his wife before he killed himself.
We've been working on violent crime, as everyone knows, and we've had some positive results on that. But you just don't stop there. You go to the next. The next thing right now is domestic violence.
Officers who respond to domestic violence calls are now taking the temperature of the scene.
And that's a lethality risk assessment.
Of the risk the offender poses to the victim and to cops. HPD has also ID'd the apartment complexes with the most reports of domestic violence.
So we've reached out to the apartment managers. All of them are on board, and we're getting literature out to them so that they can get them out to their residents.
Which is so important, since domestic violence often happens behind closed doors that leave neighbors like Marco Rivera.
He seemed like a cool person. I knew the mom very well. She was pretty, she was a nice person.
In the dark.
We have to think outside the box and become creative.
Okay, so Mia, HPD is rolling out this initiative on the west side this month, but the plan is for this to go citywide because domestic violence is a citywide problem.
So here's a question for you. We know HPD is dealing with an officer shortage. So how are they handling domestic violence with a shortage of resources?
Well, they filed and applied for a grant, and they're hoping that that grant money covers things like overtime and gets more officers out on these cases.
We can only hope so for our family's sake. Melissa Correa, thanks so much. And Melissa got a copy of the pamphlet police are handing out at Houston Apartments. It's online now at KHOU.com. Just click on this story.
Someone set a steel snare trap in the Heights that wound up trapping this cat that was stuck and in pain for several days. So who did this and why? Stephanie Whitfield live in the Heights tonight with the story. Stephanie?
Len, that cat is going to be just fine, but that's just luck. The folks at the animal rescue tell me the trap it got caught in is designed to do serious damage. Neighbors in the Heights were horrified to find a cat caught in a steel snare trap. Rescue workers think the animal was stuck for days.
There's no excuse for it whatsoever.
The Friends for Life rescue group freed the feral cat after he dragged the snare under a house. Now they, along with neighbors, are trying to track down who set the trap in the first place.
Just as easily as an animal could get in this, a child could also have stepped in this, and it would have done tremendous damage because that's what it's meant to do.
Unfortunately, this little guy found himself at the wrong place at the wrong time. Now he's neutered and in recovery.
We have animal cruelty laws here in Houston. And these types of inhumane snare traps do not abide by those laws. They are actually harmful to the animal.
Friends for Life says this cat's pain could have been avoided because they lend out humane animal traps to anyone for free. I checked, and state law says snare traps are illegal within 400 yards of a school. They're also frowned upon in urban areas because these traps are indiscriminate, so it's very possible for a family pet or even a child to get hurt, Len.
Yeah, it's very sad to see this. Thank you, Stephanie. Hopefully they'll find the person who did it.
Many HIC teachers are still waiting to hear if they'll be one of more than 200 getting a pink slip. So how did the state's largest district end up $115 million short and laying off staff? Adam Bennett is live at HIC headquarters where board members are meeting now. Adam, these layoffs are just one challenge now on the district's plate.
Yeah, the district sure has been dealing with a lot. They're trying to find a permanent superintendent. They're also trying to keep 10 underperforming schools open. All of this after what some insiders call the perfect storm of events. One of those, of course, literally is a storm, and a huge one at that. Of course, we're talking about Harvey. It's damaged several schools and facilities in HISD's fleet. It also lowered the property tax revenue that pays most of HISD's bills. Plus, on top of that, the state recently started forcing HISD to make so-called Robin Hood payments, where they had to send money to less property wealthy districts.
We may have wealthy properties in HISD, but we have very poor kids and high concentrations of them that actually need more dollars. They need more dollars than the average student in Katy or Cy-Fair to actually make sure that their education is on par.
Now, Capo says, unlike other districts, HISD sends money directly to its schools instead of keeping it more centralized. So he says that means if those schools lose money, those schools have to cut their teachers. Earlier this month, the board did back off of a plan to centralize that money, and a spokesperson told me today they don't have any plans to go back to a centralization plan. So in the meantime, the teachers union says they're hopeful that these teachers who are getting pink slips can reapply for some of the 1,500 or so vacancies that they see every single year. And the district says starting tomorrow, they'll begin hosting several career development workshops to try to help those affected find other jobs. Mia?
All right, Adam Bennett reporting. Thank you so much.
All right, let's jump outside and show you from our tower cam. You noticed our old friend humidity starting to make a comeback, and it is only going to get worse, sadly.
You know, though, here's the thing. It's back to our normal, right, David?
Yes.
This is what we've come to expect here in Houston.
We got used to San Diego weather. Now we're going to get used again to Houston weather, which means humidity, and it keeps our skin looking good. It keeps us looking young. Hotel Zaza weather bug. Beautiful afternoon out there. Lots of clouds, no rain. Quite breezy. While we're 76 degrees, that southeast wind at 17 is still gusting every now and then to 20, 25, 26 miles an hour across the board. So it's going to be a breezy evening, but that wind has shifted to the south. This is the big change, and it's going to change everything from our temperature and our humidity to also the pollen count. This should help your allergies. We'll talk more about that coming up in a little bit. We'll also talk about the eventual rain chance that it's going to bring. What are your weekend plans? Cinco de Mayo? It may involve an umbrella. Back with that in a few minutes.
Tonight, we're standing for Houston by shining a light on an organization that fights sex trafficking.
It is called Elijah Rising, and now they have a property where they offer housing to survivors. Here's Ron Trevino with more. Hey, Ron.
Len and Mia, these survivors have been through unspeakable trauma, forced into the sex trade. Many of them are just minors. They get rescued one way or another, but then what? We're taking you to a place called Kendleton Farms in Fort Bend County. The folks behind Kendleton Farms are helping to transform what was once a rundown piece of property.
So this will be our next thing.
Into a home for survivors of sex trafficking.
So a lot of trauma, number one. They come in and it's trauma, right? And so here they have a time to heal and just get some support as they get some restoration.
Kathy McGibbon should know. The program director of Kendleton Farms is also a survivor of sex trafficking, forced into it by her boyfriend, who she eventually discovered was a pimp.
I was forced to do and perform acts against my will. I was coerced and threatened daily, and so that's how I got into it. There's multiple avenues to get into being trafficked.
She escaped that life, but says it took a long time for her to recover.
It just took me a little longer because I was kind of doing it on my own, but here women don't have to do it on their own.
And McGibbon is going places. Here she is in the White House last month as new legislation was signed by the president to make it harder for sex traffickers to operate online by making the websites they use accountable.
This will be like the community dining area. And then we'll have a breakfast area over there. And then back there, we'll have a game room. And I want to put like a ping pong in here.
As they work on creating a place for survivors to heal, they say sex trafficking continues to be big business in Houston.
It's one of the top cities for sex trafficking. We get some of the most calls to the national hotline.
They just built this playground.
In all, Kendleton Farms is 84 acres out in the country, housing survivors trying to get over the trauma to start life anew.
There's so much potential out here.
For them and their children. And they're making more room out there. They hope to be able to house as many as 40 survivors, get them help, counseling, and training. Now, how bad is this problem? It's estimated there are over 300,000 victims of human trafficking just here in Texas. Len and Mia.
Yeah, it's really tragic. There's another epidemic that we've been
It's
looking
a
at.
billion-dollar industry,
Oh,
sadly.
man, yeah. Well, there's money.
Glad they're there to help, though. Elijah Rising, thanks so much, Ron.
That's great.